Hey there, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project. A copyrighted edition for our video channel, and you're watching Huck TV. And this is the continuing segment on my book review, The Hunt for Skinwalker, and this is number 4. Excuse me. So, I'm going to switch over to the Dave view of the channel and get right into the segment here. So, since I started this series, I've released the documentary Missing 411, the UFO Connection. Now that may startle some people that we're actually talking about something associated with the disappearance of missing people. Well, some of you may ask, well, what's the evidence for that? Well, that's the basis for the movie. And it is some startling evidence. And the movie starts right off with a relationship to what we're going to talk today. And what are we talking about? We're talking about this book right here that started it all, The Hunt for Skinwalker. I've talked about this book 100 times on this channel. Now, if you've never seen the back cover of it, and I've never read it, but I think it's worth reading. For more than 50 years, the bizarre events at a remote Utah ranch have ranged from the perplexing to the wholly terrifying. Vanishing and mutilated cattle, unidentified flying objects, the appearance of huge otherworldly creatures, invisible objects emitting magnetic fields and the power to spark a cattle stampede, flying orbs of light with dazzling maneuverability and lethal consequences. For one family, life on Skinwalker Ranch had become a life under siege by an unknown enemy or enemies. Nothing else could explain the horrors that surrounded them. Perhaps science could. Leading a first-class team of scientists on a disturbing odyssey into the unknown, Colm Kelleher spent hundreds of days and nights on the Skinwalker property and experienced firsthand many of the haunting mysteries. With investigative reporter George Knapp, the only journalist allowed to witness and document the team's work, Kelleher chronicles in superb detail the spectacular happenings the team observed personally and the theories of modern physics behind the phenomena. Far from the coldly detached findings one might expect, other conclusions are utterly hair-raising in their implications. Opening a door to the unseen world around us, The Hunt for Skinwalker is a clarion call to expand our vision far beyond what we know. Good book. So, this is the 4th book review on this, and we're going to start off where we ended. So, Colm Kelleher worked for the NIDS, National Institute for the Discovery of Sciences. Now, Colm was working for Robert Bigelow. That will prove to you that we are live. So, he worked for Mr. Bigelow. Mr. Bigelow hired a group of scientists, PhDs, brilliant people, to do the research. Now, at the ranch, the kind of things that they experienced, poltergeist activity, couldn't quite figure out why it was going on. UFOs, obviously, UAPs, cryptozoology type events, Bigfoot, Dogman, giant wolves, even dinosaur-like creatures. And some people would say maybe it was all haunted. Now, part of the book talks about the relationship between UFO researchers and crypto researchers. And their relationship is tentative at best. One group looks at the other and says they're not very smart, or they don't follow all scientific protocol. I've stated before, I've gone to MUFON meetings and given presentations, and everybody in the front row is a PhD. I've gone to dinner before and had PhDs surrounding me after I gave the presentation, wanting to talk to me about our results and our research. Now, the problem with this is there's a lot of people who do research who don't give data. If you've been to one of my presentations, you know I give a lot of data. And I let those around me, much smarter than me, come to the assumptions about what's going on. Now, the ghost hunters out there that you watch on TV, they stay away from everybody. They don't want to be associated with cryptos or UFOs, and that's what the book talks about as well. So NIDS was at the ranch from 94 to 2004, and they documented 100 different phenomena. And essentially, there were physical intrusions onto the Gorman's property. At one point, there were 4 2,000-pound bulls put in a trailer like sardines. They were alive. The Gormans came back one day. They couldn't find them. They started looking around, and they noticed this one trailer's rocking back and forth. And these bulls, first of all, if you've never been around bulls, they like their space. They don't like to get close to each other. They're very independent. And here's 4 bulls packed into this trailer like sardines in a can. Nobody could believe it. Nobody could understand how that was possible to even get them that close together, let alone next to each other, pushed up against each other, and then it's just a bizarre thought. They wouldn't go into those confines voluntarily. Then in August of 97, the team had some night vision watching a meadow in the sky. And they see this black creature crawling through this hole in the sky, almost like a window frame. Crawled through, jumped down, ran off. And it was seen eventually by a physicist on infrared a couple months later. Why is that important? There's so many things that we can't see in our spectrum, but can be seen in the infrared spectrum. I've told many researchers that have put up game cameras looking for a Bigfoot, it's stupidity. Of the millions out there, nothing's ever caught on camera. Why is that? Well, maybe they can see in that zone that's recording. Just a thought. Why don't you try recording in infrared? Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Nobody wants to do it. And then I have friends that are experts in photography and in videography. And they talk about filming outdoors and wanting to find UFOs, other things in the sky. And a lot of times they find it when they're filming in infrared. So, is that them trying to evade us, or is that just the zone that they're always in? Good questions. So Tom Gorman, during the daylight, at one point heard something running down his canal, splashing water all over. He's looking at it, and he can't see anything there. Well, that's pretty abnormal. In April of 77, Gorman's out and he sees all of his cattle out in the pasture, and something that he could feel on the earth moving ran right through the middle of the cattle and parted them right down the middle. And they kept running. Never saw it, but could hear it. Blue and white orbs. They're called different light forms. They had seen blue orbs fly by the outside of the residence of the Gorman house. And when the blue orbs did, the lights inside the house dimmed each time. Well, that's pretty interesting. Two things. It meant, number one, that the Gormans had to have seen the blue orbs. When you're in your house, you're not always looking out the window. So did the blue orbs appear so the people could see them, so they could see the lights dim? Or was it just a fluke that they saw them outside and they did dim at the same point? Hard to understand. And the blue orbs were also associated with incinerating 2 of the Gorman dogs. I told you that story before. Red orbs were seen on the property, and they directly caused the death and injury of several cattle in August of '77. So sometimes it didn't matter if it was red or blue. Those type of orbs are dangerous. And orbs had killed or mutilated Gorman-owned cattle and NIDS-owned cattle. NIDS did something pretty smart. In the name of science, what they did was purchase cattle and put it on the property. Kind of as an early warning system of things that are happening. And to see if the activity regarding the entities would continue even if a new owner took over. And they thought it would, because when the Gormans purchased the property, nothing really changed. If anything, it got busier. And here's something to think about. The animals, the strange animals that were seen on the Gorman property, had a physical appearance. And they had an odor. And they left tracks. But they never responded as a normal animal would to a bullet. So NIDS knew that there were some dangerous things on this property, and so they brought in a trained marksman. And one time they saw a giant cat-like animal in a tree. And Kelleher was 40 to 50 yards away and saw the expert rifleman shoot this creature. And there was little to no reaction by the cat in the tree, and eventually took off, ran off. But he was 100% positive that the rifleman hit it. So what does that mean? From 5 to 10 yards away, Kelleher saw a large dog-like animal, about 400 pounds, dog, wolf-like, 400 pounds. Again, hit by a marksman multiple times. No blood on the ground, no tissue. The only thing they found was a single claw mark in the snow. So, what can we guess from this? It's not normal. A 400-pound animal shot by a rifleman using a high-powered rifle should put that animal down quickly. Should put a hole in the side of it that's huge, and blood and tissue should scatter all over the snow. But they didn't find that. So a couple questions. Where did the bullet go in each incident? And why didn't the animal, or whatever it is, respond? So NIDS found no physical evidence that led to conclusive proof of anything. And this is where a lot of people out there take a hit at them. They say, well, then they really didn't do anything. Yeah. I think you need to understand this type of work. It doesn't give up clues easily. And just because they're not giving up physical clues, it doesn't mean it's not happening. When rational people, scientists, trained observers see something and report it, and it's reported from people with multiple backgrounds and some people who didn't even want any publicity, the Gormans, then you've got to ask yourself, why wouldn't it all be true? What's the gain? The book asks another great question. Was the source of all these different entities one thing? Or were there multiple entities causing all of these different issues? You know, is it one entity that put the cat, put the creature coming out of the window, fly the orbs around UFOs, kills the dogs? Is it all one thing that just has different faces? Or is it different things? And I wrote this. Was the ranch the United Nations of the multiple phenomena? Hoax. The ranch had a history of strange phenomena before the Gormans got there. The valley had a history of strange phenomena before NIDS got there and before the Gormans got there. Remember, the property had been supposedly cursed by the Utes. NIDS never questioned what the Gormans were saying because of their background and because of what they learned later on and what they observed. Unusual occurrences occurred even after the Gormans left. Could this be all natural phenomena? And it just so happens to be located at one place. And they talked about magnetic field anomalies, dozens of field measurements. They mapped magnetic field anomalies. They published aeromagnetic surveys, or they researched published aeromagnetic surveys. All failed to correlate to activities. Several times Gorman hid on his property, hoping to see what's leaving some of these tracks, etc. And he didn't have much success. But one time, he's out there in his field shoveling hay, and he sees up on the ridge above his property a white light. And he thought it was monitoring him. And Gorman got mad. He throws his pitchfork and he starts running in the direction of the light. And he said that he thought he caught that light by surprise. It darted down the other side of the ridge and was gone. And when it disappeared, he, in his mind, believed it was coming back. So he dove into a hay pile and buried himself in it and waited. He was watching. Several minutes later, it returned, flying over the field, his pasture, and Gorman thought it was looking for him because it was in a pattern. I wrote this. What if the object is some type of just advanced drone that's here to monitor the safety of the property? And if something drastic started to go on, maybe it would do something drastic. I don't know. Or maybe it would call ahead and bigger drones would come in. I don't know. For several minutes, the white light flew around, and then it went up near the ridge, like giving up. And then Gorman got out of the hay pile and started to taunt it. Like, ha ha ha, you didn't find me. Well, the thing blinked several times and then went off and didn't see it again. So Gorman told the staff that he thought he had tricked it. He believed it a small victory for him because he exposed its fallibility. It wasn't sophisticated enough to see him in the hay pile. Now the book says this, and I'm going to say it in my own words, but what if that object was so far more advanced than what we know that it just played along with him? Yeah, it knew it was in the hay pile. It knew he was there. It just flew around looking dumb and stupid. Because as it's in the pasture, they know it's there. They know it's watching him. And after several minutes, it probably just got bored. Said, okay, let him stay in the hay pile. I don't know. Maybe just wanted to allow him to believe that he evaded it. Now, the book says the best known hypothesis about what's going on at the ranch is extraterrestrial. It's not necessarily, they say, the most credible. They say it's insufficient data to support or exclude the hypothesis. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Gorman saw a standard 30-foot diameter disc on the ridge of their property one day when they came driving in. As they continued down the road towards their property, the disc went from on their ridge into their pasture. They said there was a bright flash of light, and suddenly that one disc turned into multiple discs. They said that was one of the few times that that standard UFO-shaped disc appeared there. Now, on November 13th, 1996, at 1 a.m., Kelleher and an employee saw a silent, fast-moving object from the north fly down, make a perfect loop around the ranch. No sound, made the loop, and just took off again. Question came up, could orbs be ET probes? We talked about that. I say, why not? Probes are a lot less expensive than human type or entity driven machines. Now, when we talked about the blue orb that came over the property when Gorman was out there and taunted the dogs, the orb dipped down low and allowed the dogs to jump up and try to bite it. They never got close. Well, they got close, but they never got it. And it dodged through the orbs dodged through the dog's mouths, zigzagged through tree branches, and exhibited much dexterity, the book said. All analysis of purported ET probes showed terrestrial metals. So during the research on the ranch, they found a lot of metals, and they didn't know what they were. And people submitted metals to them. All the metals that they found and analyzed were earthbound metals. Nothing outlandish or interesting. They couldn't find one overriding hypothesis that supported what was happening at the ranch. And these are some of the smartest people from a theoretical standpoint we have in the world. Next question is, could the activity at the ranch be related to the military? And what might be their agenda? So they talked about whatever was behind this has been going on for 50 years. Why might the military invest their money on a small rural ranch, experimenting on farm families and animals and their livestock? What would be the purpose of that long-term study? And then the team did something. When I read it, I was surprised. They enrolled some remote viewers. Some of the things that the remote viewers, when they worked on the ranch, had to say. They said that there was a weird energy vortex in the middle homestead, and that seemed to be the center point. They said the killing of the calf was done by some type of remote robotic drone, possibly interdimensional drone, that had some connection to military. Talked about during a horrific thunderstorm, one of the sons was herding up the cattle, saw a calf in the water, was going to go back and get it, came back within 20 minutes, and the calf was mutilated. So they said some type of robotic drone. So what they did is they gave the RVers some coordinates. They didn't know where. One RVer described the coordinates as nervousness, darkness, and death. 3 of 5 RVers saw a large grid net or honeycomb in the property. The Gormans had reported hearing heavy equipment or machinery coming from underground. Previous owners had warned Gorman against digging, and they went back to the question, could this all be military related? At one point, NIDS found an ice circle on the pond there on the property. They allowed a local psychic to come in, and the psychic said it was produced by underground technology without any knowledge that they were hearing that other owners had heard things underground. I thought that was interesting. The statement from NIDS was that they brought the psychics and RVers onto the property in an attempt to generate leads. I can understand that. When you start to hit a brick wall, activity starts to slow down. When you're not finding physical evidence, you start going further and further out to the fringe. Now, they supposedly were using some of the best RVers in the world. I've talked many times about my plight with RVers. I stand by what I've said. Some people thought that the ranch location is of a clandestine military ops, and the research that NIDS did said that they couldn't rule it out. I want you to remember that after NIDS did their research, the Defense Intelligence Agency studied the ranch. Why would our own government study our own military if we were in charge of the ranch? That doesn't mean that somebody else's military isn't there doing it. I don't mean from this world. Maybe it's from another world, a cross-dimensional world. Who knows? The question they asked was, does the U.S. have the technology that replicates what they experienced on the ranch? So some of the UFOs that are seen, maybe even some of the animals that are seen on the ranch, could be holographic projections, and they explain this. And that may account for some of the observations, and even some of the advanced camouflage experiments could account for what was seen or heard, like running down through the pond and not seeing anything. NIDS didn't believe our military had all these capabilities. And apparently the Defense Intelligence Agency didn't think so either. Otherwise, why would they spend millions of dollars studying this? So holographs don't leave footprints. Animals seen left prints, disturbed oil, and they left odor. Holographs don't. One entity stripped 45 pounds of flesh from a calf in the daylight, large impressions in the ground. Holograph couldn't do that. Also important to note that the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Ops had engaged in massive deception and disinformation in the 1980s to 1990s. And their deception was that bogus evidence that there were ET visitations, and it was designed to conceal military technology. Now that's an interesting point. Our own government is trying to deceive us into believing that there were extraterrestrials visiting us, rather than us thinking that it's our own aircraft. So remember what I said. Some believe that our government owns technology that's 50 years in advance from where we are today. Do you realize how far out that is? Why couldn't it be some of the things that's happening at the ranch? Imagine if we had all this technology, that this location Could it be possible that it's a military test center for all this advanced technology? Many of the things that NIDS writes about, if the society was so advanced that owned this technology, it would seem that it was just a bothersome issue to come and harass a family that is just trying to raise steers and bulls on their own property. What would be the point? I don't understand. But it's a very interesting topic, to say the least. And this was our 4th video we did on it. There's 3 others you could still watch. I encourage you to go back, and I'll list them all below. I appreciate you being here, and we'll go into more detail one more time on this later on. Be safe. Do something kind for somebody today. It'll make your soul feel better. Somebody who doesn't expect something, just go do it for them. Help them into the car if it's an older person with some groceries. Hold the door open for them. Smile at somebody. Costs nothing. I appreciate you being here. Paulides out.